Hello everyone, welcome to our Cycling Transportation Planning 101 training. Today, within the scope of this training, we will talk about road safety depending on the infrastructure, and the other hand, actually we will be talking about communication. Our instructors consist of 3 people. One of them is me. WRI Sustainable Cities is where I work, and I'm working specifically on urban mobility, areas of active mobility, and I'm working in planning and design of types of transport such as pedestrians, cyclists, and in the design of public space and all-right streets. Our other instructor is Celal Tolga İmamoğlu. Tolga Bey has been working in WRI Turkey since 2013, from management of projects related to transport and road safety to inspection and supervision of road safety bicycle paths, IT corridors, and to the single consultants in the implementation of bicycle projects. However, he is also working in the field of integration transport types and accessibility, especially in relation to road safety and traffic. Also, he has been working for a long time in the analysis of accidents, black points, and development of approaches to this. He's also a commissioner of IAF, Roadside Safety Commissioner, and he's among the head instructors of the UIT. Since 2015, he has been in 18 countries, engaged in multiple capacity building workshops, trained around 500 people, especially in the field of urban mobility in African countries such as Ghana, Ethiopia, Senegal, Kenya. At the moment, his works is mainly in Africa countries. Ms. Damla Özlüer is Director of Social Communication Projects, and she has worked with many national and international companies and non-governmental organizations for 18 years. In particular, she is someone who specialized in social benefit communication, responsible communication, and sustainable communication. And she also worked as a consultant, a professor, editor, and manager in social benefit-based communication projects. She actually shares experiences in the field of corporate and social communication with training. In this context, she is the Turkish representative of DNS Network, which brings together agencies established throughout the European Union and working in the field of social benefit communication. In this respect, we'll be providing training. In fact, there are many dimensions of transportation, especially bicycle transportation. Therefore, it can be viewed from different angles. So as much as we can today, we will try to share the details about the incentives, legal regulation in Turkey, and we will be sharing our insights on how it should be evaluated in terms of road safety. And let us share, of course, most importantly, in the end, we will be sharing what we want to say about the communication is. In the studies we carried out, we realized that the standard communication approach is not actually sufficient in active transportation systems, and how to develop it is one of the issues that has been investigated by municipalities. Then we actually think that in the units we work with, there should be specialized approach in the field of road safety, bicycle transportation, planning and communication. Each of us and I have already talked about them. So when we look at what we will give in this detail today, we'll be talking about the situation of bicycle transportation in the laws and regulations in Turkey, the transport system and the solutions covering road safety elements will be introduced by Mr. Tolga. The necessary approaches for development of sustainable transportation communication strategies towards the bicycle bracket will be shared by Ms. Damla. Now, when we look at the current situation in incentives and legal frameworks, when we look at what have been done, the first bicycle regulation came out in 2015. Therefore, many incentives projects have been published by both Ministry of Health, Ministry of Environment and Urbanization, and other relevant ministries. When we look at the projects published by Ministry of Health, General Director of the Public Health, for example, the most important ones is these symbolic projects. Maybe, for example, a project which promotes physical activity, which took place between 2010 and 2018. And the scope of project, 1 million bicycles were aimed to be distributed among children, schools, universities and municipalities. The Ministry of National Education here were conducted, and elective sports and physical activity courses were opened in the secondary schools. And bicycles were delivered in ceremonies and protocols to the schools that implemented the bicycle model, of course. The Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources National Energy Efficiency Action Plan 2017-2020 is, of course, activated as the Bicycle Action Code, and development and improvement of bicycle transportation. The aim is to choose sustainable and urban regional basis. Therefore, here it's pretty important that it's included in National Energy Action and Efficiency Plan. As you know, Ministry of Labor, Environment and Urbanization. Ministry of Environment and Urbanization is also an important figure who works in transportation and other urbanization systems. So, therefore, both local regions and the ministry have undertaken incentive projects. So since 2015, the ministry provided funds to the many cities who applied. So we see that our ministry plays importance for this fact. So in terms of the regulations and laws, we have law on traffic 6047, which is one of the reference that we need to look at. And this law covers about the users, the capabilities of the users who are able to ride a bike, especially within the scope of the age. For example, the riders should be more than 11 years of age. When we look at the standards in the Turkish Standard Institution, we have 5 standards about bicycle. One of them is about bicycle roads, passes, design rules in the roundabouts, design rules for the bicycle park infrastructures in the urban areas, so in the third one, it's about urbanization and pedestrian walks, sustainable and fractal sustainable systems. It does not refer to the bicycle directly, but it has actually. temporal planning and construction regulation has systems for the bicycle roads with reference to the bicycle transportation. This is the catalog about and which covers the details. In reconstruction planning, we see some rules and fundamentals about the bicycle roads, and also, in addition, in the urban design projects, it says about the remedies for this and solutions in elevating for the bicycle roads. So in general, we see many references in the regulations and laws. In 2015, a regulation on bicycle roads and stations reconstruction was in force since 2015. And in 2019, a new regulation called Bicycle Roads Regulation, and it was published in the official gazette. So the regulation in 2015 was removed after that regulation. To design a bicycle road, we need to refer and look at to the regulation and enforce. And the objective of this regulation is making the bicycle transportation to be for transportation and walkthrough and for sport activities. The difference between two regulations is making the pedestrian roads and the traffic roads with the bicycle roads, integrating bicycle roads into the traffic itself. So, of course, there are different types of bicycle roads, which was also covered in the regulations. So, I wanted to share all of these types: shared bicycle roads, bicycle lines, separated bicycle roads, bicycle parcours, rural areas bicycle parcours, bicycle roads and bridges for the bicycles. So what are the important things that the Ministry of Environment and Urbanization plays importance? So they look for the answer for the question that is there any scaled bicycle road project? Is there any decision taken by the Commission of the Provincial Directorate? Is there any reconstruction planning, etc.? So, all in all, as I said, in terms of regulation and laws, and also in terms of the administrative issues, the training is actually more comprehensive, but I needed to wrap the presentation up because it's a 101 session. So the topics, like as I showed you, like the questions asked by the ministry, we need to also look at the training and other issues. I'd like to give the floor to the Tolga, Celal Tolga İmamoğlu for other session. For your attention. Floor is yours. Thank you, Ms. Merve. And I'd like to extend my gratitude to the MARUF decree in MARUF21 and I would like to thank all of the listeners who allocated their time in this weekend. Now I'm sharing my presentation. I think you can see my screen, so I can start my presentation. I think our time is limited, and Merve did her best to make her presentation short. So today I will do my best to inform you about the bicycle transportation. So first of all, now we talk about bicycle transportation. I think you have participated in many trainings or programs, but the most important thing, the output that is left in you is a change. What is a change? Change is a question. No, the change is different. Change is something that the engineers and designers and planners look for, and it's a reflection of the questions we asked so far. So the planning is about how many vehicles that we can fit in the roads. So for more than 100 years, the mathematics of this planning has been done. So as an engineer, I did a lot of reading and projects about the change, but we need to change this. Why? Is because if we only think about the vehicles, that we can fit in the road, or if you think about the mobility of the planning, we will see that the problem will get 10 times more. So we have a problem here, and we need to spot this problem. And bicycle roads and bicycle transportation is one of the core solutions of this problem. In 2027, there will be more than 5 million bicycles on the roads. So the COVID-19 pandemic made figures a little bit different, so we need to take into account of COVID facts while interpreting the figures. So we have data here. More than half of the accidents which result in death happens in the cities. So in addition, we see that 6.7% of the deaths in the worldwide is due to the environmental pollution and also the emissions. So we have been talking about emissions, problems, and accidents and deaths, which corresponds to the one single question: what is the urban mobility? So as you can see, there's a picture, which is a traffic jam in the pass on the road. Do you think that urban planning, urban transportation is a transportation system that we think we need to take our cars and go wherever you want by car or cars? No. In this presentation, in the first page, when we talk about the urban planning and urban transportation, the only thing that we consider is the special vehicles. So how can we get away with this world with full of deaths because of the accidents
and due to other facts in context of urban transportation. We shouldn't wait for some kind of a teleport system, because we'll not be able to see that technology soon. What can we do? As WRI, we planned a sustainable program which has three different titles. One is to prevent, which is about minimizing the number of vehicles and the length. The second is to change. We need to look for other types of transportations and more sustainable ones. And the third one is the improvement, to improve something. We need to improve the technology and operation. So if we integrate electricity cars and buses, the sustainable transportation approach will be realized. And these are the three steps that we place importance in context of WRI, and try to integrate all the steps in our sustainable programs. This is one of the important slides that I have today, which is the accessibility. If we look outside of Istanbul, because Istanbul is one of the most crowded in terms of traffic jam. The fourth one ranks in the fourth among the most crowded cities in the world, and Izmir is among 35th cities. So we have many crowded cities. One of the problems people have is a traffic jam, obviously. So some politics and other decision makers always talk about that they will solve the problem in traffic jam. But the traffic jam, the congestion, is not a problem, actually. It's an output, the problems that we have. Whoever tells you that he or she is going to solve the problem of traffic congestion, she or he would not. What is a traffic congestion? The traffic congestion is a negative output, an adverse output of the project that of the facts that we have as a problem. So it's not a reason, but a result. Although the concept of accessibility have many versatile aspects, but we need to define it as not a mobility, but offering them many types of transportations. The people who wants to go from somewhere to somewhere. It asks the question if a person can has access to the types of transportation. Let's say that we consider them ourselves as urban planners. So everyone can be one. Like your mother or father can also be urban planners, because they live in a city. They have a necessity of transportation. They have a need. For example, you will imagine that you need to go to the hospital. You think of the types of roads that you need to take. There are many. So you consider that you should go somewhere and take another one, take another road or take another types of transportation. So finally, you consider that you should go by car. If a person has no accessibility due to the urban transportation, they obviously will opt for their special vehicles, their cars. So how can we solve this problem, the problem of accessibility? We need to reconsider the design and hierarchy of the road networks. We need to create a road which has different lines, and in every line there should be another types of vehicles. So, for example, we need to change the demography of the roads. So we see some pictures here. Bicycles. We can place more bicycles on a line. So, but it's about 1/3 of the bus, which is because of their size. So, now, in this part, I'd like to provide a summary of the presentation that I made so far. As you know, this is a training program. We have a motorization tendency in our urban planning, which also have the problem of emissions in the traffic accidents. We need to consider this fact not as a question or a problem of traffic congestion, but as in context of urban planning and accessibility. And we need to consider how we can run this one. So bicycles have an important share in terms of accessibility, and bicycles are inarguably important place in the urban planning and worldwide.
It should be safe. This is the utmost priority, and the following part of my presentation will be on the safety part of design. I will skip global trends because you're aware of them. Since we don't have sufficient time, I'm not sure if I will be able to show the video. No, I cannot play the video. So I want to make an emphasis on the fact that we have to have safe bicycle roads and safe bicycles. If we don't have safe designs, maybe we can see some incidents on social media, social networks, or we can see some incidents on visual media. But when we look from the aspect of a professional, we can say that there is no sufficient emphasis on this aspect of the issue. You see, these are news reports from accidents, and you see 258 bicycle drivers died in 2 years. These are real statistics. For instance, we can think about how many bicycle riders died, and you didn't know that before. I know many years statistics. 163 people died during their bicycle transportation in 2016. So this also shows that bicycle transportation is dangerous. If you don't ensure the safe infrastructure, people will not tend to use the bicycles. If the bicycle driver is not safe, you should acknowledge that the system is not safe. It's dangerous. So here is a comparison of the accidents with the bicycles and the other transportation means, the vehicles. We can think of buses, trucks, and other means of vehicles. These are the general tendency is shown by red, and the other color shows the bicycle. There was a connection problem. So this means that the accidents with the bicycles is a problem on its own. Bicycles compared to other vehicles is similar because it has many accidents occurred. So how can we make bicycle transportation safer? As WRI Sustainable Cities, we have 6 design principles. The first one goes like the bicycles need moving spaces, and they have basic needs that should be met for safe bicycle transportation. If you want safe bicycle transportation in your city, the most important principle and the priority should be designing it as an interactive network. I will go in detail later. It shouldn't have cuts. It should be a sustainable network. Better vision for bicycles. The third one is about the junctions. In the world, in the most accidents with bicycles, the bicycle crashes, about them, there is a statistic, 40% of them goes to junction points, meeting points. So this should be addressed. In low and narrow volumes of traffic, there should be shared bicycle roads, and the other 2 I will be talking later. For safe and accessible bicycle transportation, it should be safe, and it should be without any cuts. This slide is really important for the content of our training. The first one is complete. So it shouldn't be like the bicycle road was started to be built, the local government or the municipality worked on some bicycle roads. They came up with a bicycle road, but it doesn't have any function in the city. It doesn't have any connections to any network. It doesn't ensure your transportation, or it doesn't get you to another mean of transportation. This is unacceptable. I should be emphasizing on this once more. These systems should be complete, compact. Network connections, one-type infrastructure, connection with other means of transportation, and large parking lots. These are the aspects. It should be complete, compact, safe, and it should be attractive. What do we mean by attractive? We mean that on this road or on this network, there should be social safety. There might be shops, there might be other social commodities. This is about this urban life, so I will be talking about this later. I will not go into detail, but what we mean is that there should be changes in socio-economic life of the city. WRI Sustainable Cities have Danish bicycle embassy on a project, and it's a really interesting work. So we can leave the link about it, and you can see how bicycle transportation contributes to the socio-economical life of the city. Then we are talking about this compact and complete network connections. We have been talking about this, but you can ask of a practice, and of course there is an example of a good practice. WRI Latin America Sustainable Cities branch has a project in Colombia between 2003 and 2013 with the addition of 100 kilometers of bicycle road led to a decrease in the death by 47.2%. You can ask how this was possible. First of all, in a city, you should introduce the bicycle road as a network, and you should be getting there gradually. To do that, you should be raising the awareness of the other users of vehicles or other transportation means, or they can be pedestrians and it can be a user of another transportation means. They should be aware of the bicycle road, the bicycle users, and they should be aware of their motions, their movements, and they should be altering their motion or movements and their behavior. So if you introduce this as a network and you expand it in over the cities, you can get decreases in the death number. When you plan this bicycle road to be introduced to the city, you should be focusing on the fact that it should be accessing some certain points. If you were to go back to the previous slides, you should be making the first and the last kilometer connection. When you go out from your apartment, you should be accessing the bicycle road, and this road should be less than 1 kilometer. And let's say you can get to the transportation means with a walk of less than 2 kilometers. You should be going to the school, hospitals by the bicycle road with a walk less than 2 kilometers. It shows that it's an accessible transportation mean. Most of the cities in Turkey do not have functional bicycle roads. They are colored in blue and they are connected to a main or artery or to a main axe. These are pilot practices, but they are not complete and compact bicycle networks. We cannot say that. There is a good practice, as I said, Bogota, Colombia. Is there any from Turkey? Yes, there is. I am not sure if you can see it. There is a map to the left top side. This is the main transportation plan of Konya, and you can see the lines in red, and these show the current bicycle roads. The rest is the plant. As you see, on the city center transportation plan, there are no bicycle roads on the map. I don't know if my pointer is visible, but you see that it is from the city center towards the outskirts of the city. Even though they did not put bicycle roads on the plan, later on it changed. By the way, this is from 2016. I should be saying that. This is from 2016. So they were planned to be built on the outskirts of the city. What's the reason? What's the point here? We obtained data from Konya police about the traffic crashes. You see, it's a black dot map of traffic accidents, traffic crashes, and this was a map designed for bicycle transportation. The red ones are with casualties, and you can see the density, concentration of the accidents. It was planned on city map, and when we make the analysis and when we see the data, the bicycle users are injured or dead on the city center mainly. Between 2008 and 2013, the cycling network expanded. But when it expanded, the number of cyclist death and injury accidents increased. What's the meaning of this? You can think that it coincides with the Colombian example, because as you remember, when the network expanded, there was a huge decrease in Colombia, but it's the opposite in Konya. The network expanded per kilometer, but there is an increase in death. Why? Because it is on the outer part of the city and it is not compact and connected. For road safety, user behavior change. For instance, a resident in Konya, in the outskirts, when they want to get to the bicycle road, it starts the journey on the bicycle road, but when they get to the city center, since there are no bicycle roads, they have to change their user behavior, and the surrounding people should be changing their behavior towards them, and these lead to conflict and crashes, and of course these might lead to casualties. So these two examples, the Colombian example and the example, are really important. If you invest in the bicycle infrastructure, you cannot be saying that it is safe. And the most important criterion, as I said, is designing it as network. You can say we made kilometers of roads to the media, but the data might show negative output. Integration with public transportation is really important, of course, and it is quite popular abroad. You can see bicycle roads integrated to metro and other transportation means. The compact and legible bicycle roads are important. We are doing well in this aspect. We are good at this. There are different systems. There are kiosks, stands, routes, and these also have to be legible, and these are good examples. Cycling parking lots. These are discussed under the scope of urban planning and design, and parking lots should be able to use as points where people get together. Accessibility is of course important. You need space for this. In terms of design, we have four main topics: motion and space, speed and volume infrastructure, and the casualties depending on the infrastructure. The cyclist needs, and we do not have to go into detail. When we look at the cyclist as an actor in traffic, you see we need to make a division between the function and the behavior. You see the space between two cyclists and the space between the pedestrian walk and the cyclist, and with the vehicle. So there should be space between all these actors. There are different standards and measurements on the world, but what I always say is that we might have international standards, but to meet these standards, we should be looking retrospective within your context, and you should be collecting your own data and come up with your own standard. That's the best mean of doing that. The vehicle speeds are important factors. Mainly, cyclists are defenseless users. That's how we call them. And inside this category, there is pedestrians, public transportation users, and cyclists. These are defenseless transportation users. When there are conflicts or crashes, depending on the speeds, the risk of death is high in this category. If you crash to a cyclist or a pedestrian with 80 kilometers of speed, the survival rate is almost none. this graphic shows that data. Under 30 kilometers of speed, the death rate is quite low, but when you go up to 50 kilometers of speed, you reach to more than 50% of death rate. So to designate cycling safe, you should be putting emphasis on the traffic speed. Let me repeat this. If you want to come up with a cyclist network in your city, the priority should be given to the speeds. I have been in many meetings, and when when I hear the other speakers, they almost never talk about the speed. This is the Danish approach, and the approach from Denmark is retrospective. They call it 100 years of experience, and it is really 100 years of experience, and the output is here. I will be talking about the output, and this is one of the most important slides in my training. The first one was the point on accessibility and the wrong definition on the traffic junction, and this is the second one. If you want to come up with a cyclist network and you have to do the planning, you should be putting emphasis secondly on the traffic speeds. Cycling road, share roads, paired road, these are the terms that you always hear during these meetings, and you might be working on these as well. But these 2 points are the most important ones. You selected a network and you have different roads on this network. For instance, you have the main artery, then you have supplementary roads, you have the collective roads, then you have the streets, or you have the what we call express lanes. You have many different ways and roads with different functions, and you came up with this network. So in this cyclist network there are different components, and you should be thinking of which cycling infrastructure to use, because in Turkey there's a conception that they are all the same. The blue lane and the the barriers, and people always talk about them, but it is different. I am not sure if my pointer is visible, but if your motor vehicle speeds are at a certain point, let me briefly explain this. There might be legislative limits, but people are going faster. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about the measured traffic speed. And if the average motor vehicle speed is less than 30 and the traffic volume is less than 2,000 vehicles, you can come up with shared bicycle road. What we mean by shared road is having these actors on a shared platform, on a shared road. You might be talking about the calm streets, etc., terms like that. The measured traffic speed is less than 30 kilometers, and the traffic volume is less than 2,000 vehicles. You can have shared roads. When do we need bicycle roads? What I call bicycle road is spared roads. We have barriers in Turkey, and it's a spared road. If the motor vehicle traffic volume is about 6,000 and the speed is about 40 kilometers, you can have bicycle road. And a spared bicycle road, a private bicycle road, is necessary when the traffic volume is more than 10,000 and the average speed is about 50 kilometers per kilometer. And there is another solution. It is coming up with a bicycle road, with a spared road with barriers. and it is when we have the traffic speed around 60, 70, and 80 kilometers. Bicycle highways are examples of this, and I'm not sure of them because I barely heard of them. So you planned a network, and this is a complete and compact network. I talked about the data. It shows that regardless of the length of the road, people might die or get injured because they are defenseless on the road. This is for sure. And after planning the network, you should be designing the road type, and you should come up with the measurements of traffic volume and traffic speed. That's what you should be taking into consideration when you are designating the road network. You can see the examples of bicycle roads from the world, and we have spared bicycle roads. They might be one ways or two ways, and this is the question. Two ways topic is discussed densely in Turkey. But since we don't have the previous process when designing and planning the bicycle transportation, we end up discussing one way or two ways of bicycle roads. So we jump to the end of the discussion. What do you, if you were bicycle road, you see this is one way and the one to the right is two ways bicycle road. If you were to ask what is the most important factor deciding on this, I can say that since the previous method is not conducted, we always say we will be building the bicycle roads, and then we always come up with one-sided bicycle roads on the main road. This is for sure. You will almost never see double bicycle roads to the both sides of the road. I should be underlining this. When designing but inside the city, our first priority between the infrastructure types, one-sided bicycle roads should be the priority. Double ways should be an exception. When turning to the left, the crashes are more dangerous when you have two sides of bicycle roads. You see here one-way bicycle road is to the one side of the road, and the other direction is to the opposite of the road. So with the junction markers and signs, you can direct the cyclist movement, and it can be complete without any cuts. And there are different standards for bicycle roads from 1.7 meters to 2.2 meters. This is an example from Rio. As you see, there is a spared bicycle road here. This is an example from Vancouver, Canada, and you see that it is spared and there are some barriers like flower pots. This is not safe in terms of road safety, but it can be discussed as an example. When a vehicle crashes to a flower pot, it damages the driver, and also it can harm the cyclist as well. So these great blocks of concrete are not favored by me. They are designated with flowers to show that there might be some architectural effort, but it can be dangerous for road safety. Protective bicycle lanes. There are examples in Turkey, and the material varies from plastic to iron. Protective bicycle lanes are the most safe, accessible, and protective roads. It is spared from the pedestrian walk and the road, and it has different levels. And we see them popular in Amsterdam and Copenhagen and in that region. Double ways bicycle lanes, there might be standards of 2.5 meters, and the standards may vary, and I will be giving you data about this. So what I wanted to talk about before was the problem with the one-sided double ways bicycle lanes. All statistics show us that one-sided bicycle lanes compared to the others have 75% of injury risk. You put this, and during turns to the left there are problems. The cyclists and the vehicle users crash. When can we do this? If you have a boulevard, and on this boulevard, let me briefly explain this. It is really difficult for our cities. Our poor urban planning does not allow this. We always come up with junctions. If you don't have any turns to left, if you don't have any conjunctions, you can make double ways of bicycle lanes, two ways bicycle roads. And if you do this without taking into consideration the previous factors, you will lead to cyclist crashes. We always talk about 50 kilometers, but we are always coming up with two ways of bicycle roads, and people always count the kilometers, the length, by taking into consideration the total length, that is double ways, that is two ways. So it is attractive for the politicians, for the local governments. Inside the city and on the main arteries, and particularly in the Turkish context, there are many conjunctions, and it is not preferred. Elevated bicycle lanes or pedestrian walk leveled bicycle lanes. This is the last point. We have examples from Konya. Bicycle lanes inside the pedestrian walks. This is not also favored because it does not serve to comfort and safety. It is almost impossible to walk on these lanes because it blocks the pedestrians. We have standards in Turkey as well, and these might vary between 1.5 and 1.8 meters. Bus and bicycle lanes are also suggested. If you don't have any space or area, we can think of using the road for buses and cycles. This was implemented in London, but in the first year, 55 cyclists died in London. So junction and accessibility points, visibility and other factors are important. Protected conjunctions. If you want to come up with a different design, taking into consideration road safety and the cyclist being defenseless, you should be differentiating it. within the eyes of the vehicle users. If you do not raise awareness, if you do not make them aware of the cyclists, we will always have crashes and accidents on the roundabouts. It is almost 40 or 45% of the whole accidents and crashes. However, in Turkey, we see that the blue road continues. It might be 4 ways of roundabouts, or it might be a roundabout, but you don't have any blue road on that. There is no option for the bicycle road. And roundabout, the bicycle road continues. We are saying to the cyclist, in a way, you should be surviving this roundabout and you can then continue using the roundabout. That's what we saw in Konya. So what should we do? 6 slides before, I made an emphasis on the fact that inside the city we should not have bicycle roads on double ways, particularly in Turkey and on the main artery. We should not making one-sided double ways of bicycle lanes. We should be making bicycle roads on both sides with one direction. And on the roundabouts, we should be making bike boxes. This might be translated into Turkish as bisiklet kutusu. And we have this bike box concept, and you can see the example here. This is to give space to cyclists, to give advantage to the cyclists during the traffic light pauses. And also it helps to keep the cyclists safe inside the roundabout. And also there should be lanes for cyclists to do their maneuvers and to do their turns. And we call this double turn, and to make this they should be compact. It is not rocket science, it is quite easy. It's a quite easy design approach. Let me give you an example about this. This is from Paris. It's under Eiffel Tower. I don't know if you're up to date about the news.
This is one of the cities that makes it as an advantage. So you see some roads for the bicycles here. It seems like a bicycle-friendly road because it has some signs on it for different lanes. But this is how it should look like. So you can make this drawing in 5 minutes only. As you can see, these are the lanes for the bicycles essentially, but on the other side of the road there is a different space. So the whole area is allocated for the vehicles. But with this design, we see a big change here. So the bicycles can go anywhere it wants in different colors. So in terms of the colors, in Turkey we have the same application in within the passes and the roundabouts to mark as attention for the other drivers, not for other kind of visualization, but as you can see, there are some precautions for the pedestrians as well. So in 5 minutes, you can integrate bicycle roads into roundabouts as well. Of course, there are many roads for the pedestrians. So you both make it more safe and create spaces for other stakeholders, other people in the roads. So as you can see, this is what we do in Turkey. For example, there is a bike road here, but we do not do anything else more than that. So there is no safety line within the roundabout or any kind of mobility. So the bike road continues afterwards. But the prerequisite here is the fact that there should not be two other bicycles there. Should be single. So maybe we can say that why did the municipality color it as a blue? But if it does, it may confuse other people there. For less speed on the bike roads, we use this system, and maybe we can use in the exit ones. The shared ones, the shared rules can be in places where there are less traffic. So this kind of signs might minimize the speed of the bicycle riders, or maybe and the roads which are close to the traffic, and the riders can drive safely. Another thing is that we can have different roads for the bicycle itself with less speed. So as you can see, there is a roundabout here, and this design. So there are some two other pedestrians in which pedestrian walks, and this pedestrians walk. So you can move it into the platform as well. But we can also do traffic calming projects without pedestrians. So the bike comes and turns right, for example, and there are signs to make the rider to slow down. So these are the examples from Turkey. I'm going quickly on that. This is from Izmir. It's a bicycle road in the coastline. It is allocated in different sided lines, integrated within the walking, jogging parcours. But all of these corridors can be planned as integrated of the urban planning, which will make available for people to go anywhere they want. So as you can see here, from bicycle road to the green one, and then it merged. It merged after 1 kilometer to make it usable for other vehicles. We use it in Turkey, but I don't see any problem in terms of implementing this kind of project. But it can bring different problems, obviously. Now I'm going to show you different types of pictures to tell you about the problems. So as you can see, there's a bike road. It's not visible because of the snow, but there comes vehicles on that roads. As I need to say again, there shouldn't be double-sided one lane for bicycles. So the vehicles will not look on their left, but there are two-sided bicycle roads, unfortunately. There should be that kind of sign to make it visible that it's two-sided. For example, you put this two double-sided bike lane, but there is no protection for the bicycle riders. Considering the angle here, the vehicles coming up can go quickly and change their directions. So the vehicles should not look on the left and right, but there should be a sign for them to to say that I should look on my left. Another problem is there should be a separating line between the road and the bicycle road, which is a safety problem. It was planned accordingly, but the planning is not that correct actually. So you need to create a wideness in accordance with the standards and regulation, but in this picture, as you can see, the width of the bicycle road is not enough. It should be more than 2 meters, 2.4 meters, should be 2.4 meters. So this is another example. This sign shows that bicycle is in different lane and the pedestrian are in different lane. It shows that the bicycle comes on the left, but the pedestrian will walk on the right. But you need to change accordingly to warn people that the bicycle road is actually two-sided. So we make one-way, double-sided bicycle roads, yes, but we also need to put some introducing and informing signs on the streets. So that kind of incorrect and inappropriate planning will make it less safe because of lack of signs. So in this one, you can see the cars are coming so fast, but the color stops quickly. As you can see, the blue one, there should be a separated, a long bicycle road. As you can see, the traffic speed is 120 kilometers per hour. But you want to create a bicycle road on that road specifically, they should create a separated road, not sided with the main road. In this road, for example, imagine that you ride a bicycle in that one. You will not be able to ride a bike because of the wind that comes on your left, because of the other vehicles. There should be a separated lane for the bicycle roads, completely separated one. And at most, there should be a bike sideway, a motorway for the bicycles themselves. So in this one, we can see that the sign says there should not be a pedestrian or vehicles, but it's not correct one. Here we can see at the roundabout, it says that you need to let the other vehicles to pass, but which is also incorrect. If you run that kind of roundabout here, so you should change the roundabout completely. This is a good example that I need to cover in a more comprehensive way. I talked to you about the importance of the roundabout and passes, the importance of the risks in the roundabouts. So you can see there are precautions. As you can see, the blue lane continues. So As you can see, the vehicles turns right. They see the blue lane, and it prevents the crash. But this colorization should not also be there, but before the road. The road safety comes first among other risks. So if you have sufficient budget, why not? Maybe a different color will make other drivers to be careful. So there's a quick turning on the left. The angle is very wide for the vehicles, so the speed will be more obviously. Maybe you can create a safety by creating a ramp for the vehicles to slow down. So color or other types of signs are not enough to, to make sure that the road is safe. Why is because while making that road, as you can see, this one is ill designed in terms of road safety. The the angle on turning on the left is very wide, which makes other drivers to go fast. You can make a quick turning because the road is so wide, which maximizes the risks accordingly. So if you put the bicycle rider on that road, you need to take precautions accordingly. This is the example that I really like. This is a road in Tekirdağ. They started within a point, but then suddenly stops and it has barriers in front of it. Let me say this again. I also showed you the figures, statistic figures. If you do not do a network, you should not do this. You should not start from one point and stop suddenly. Another problem is, as you can see, pedestrians walk on the bike roads, which is a problem because they have to, because there are no ways for them to walk on. Another problem in Turkey that we see, the bicycle road is here. As you can see, the people were walking on that. Pedestrians on the left. Essentially, it's not that bad. It's separated by trees. It is separated quite well, but its positions are not that correct. So the bicycle road should be on the left and the pedestrian should be on the right, on the outside of the road, because pedestrians should be far from the motor vehicles. So there are two problems. Pedestrians walk on the bicycle roads, and the other problem is the positions of the roads. The roads should be vice versa. So this picture is about the audit of the road. So if you put on the right the bicycle road, the other people on the store will put their items on that. So in our road safety tracking system, as you can see, we put barriers to prevent crashes. These are the other works in road safety investigation programs. That this is a problematic one. Let me say it again. If you make a one-way double-sided bicycle road, you'll be confronted by parked cars here. So you need to change the positions of your cars. So when the car is moving, the driver in the car should see the bicycles coming towards him or her. So if you make that kind of bicycle roads, you need to consider the maintenance costs as well. As you can see, it should be remade. That's because it's erased and not visible, which is a safety problem. Another one, so you can see there are some trainers training people to train on how to use a car, how to drive a car. But ironically, they see that they have problems, they make errors, but they are from the Ministry of National Education, which is very interesting. So whoever asks, so if you ask the question that which one has more mentality or more awareness on the bicycles, no, there is no difference between the two types of drivers, even in bus drivers. As WRI Sustainable Cities program, in many cities, in Istanbul, Kocaeli, Konya, İzmir, and Eskişehir, we conduct road safety inspection within the scope of safety tracking. What kind of precautions or projects were implemented appropriately to track all the projects. So you can see there's a sign here that we put to warn drivers to let the vehicles on the right hand side. The planning phase, as you can see, there is no actually a bicycle road implemented yet, but as WRI, we conducted different types of programs. This is what we have done here. So the first one is the traffic calming precautions. So there are signs for them to see that they should slow down and let the other bicycle. Another one is the bicycle road crossed with the bus road. So there is a sign for the bicycle riders to slow down because he or she is approaching to the bus station, because once they are in the bus station, the bus might make a maneuver and might crash. And of course, there are some passengers in the bus which are also sensitive and less vulnerable. And this picture, as you can see, if we have some kind of object like a tree that we cannot carry, you need to make flexible roads. You can make it narrow or wide to prevent it to confront with the object. I don't know if my time is limited, as you know.
due to the pandemic, we have been having our session online. I will talk about some effects, some and good effects of bicycle roads. So these are the examples from Copenhagen and Amsterdam. You see, sorry, I need to change the battery of my laptop. So you see how advanced they are in bicycle roads. In Amsterdam or in other cities, they transformed the petrol crisis, the oil crisis, into an advantage in 70s. Of course, there are a history in terms of the bicycles there, but they turned this crisis into an advantage, which was a turning point for the bicycle roads. They implemented the sustainable transportation, and the crisis made them to think about it. The pandemic did the same as well. So we know that in our urbans, there will be less. There are less people on the streets and the cities, which necessitated the transportation. As you can see in the 20th century, this is how the New York looked like. This one is from Istanbul. So as you can see, in Istanbul, people used to walk. We need that, we always show the classic photos from Denmark or Netherlands, but this is how far we have gone from that point to that point. But we're not able to catch the advantages, the opportunities. We saw what kind of turning point the Copenhagen had or Amsterdam. So in the pandemic, we also same an effect. In pandemic, in COVID-19 pandemic, there were and still there are less motorized transportation. As you know, in between the Kıltoprak and in Bağdat Street, there is a bike road here, a new one. One of the important points here that I need to lay emphasis is that Paris is one of the cities that turned into an advantage. So look at what Paris has done so far with since the start of the pandemic. They turned the pandemic, the crisis, into an advantage in context of bike roads. So both locally and also in the governmental level, they looked for the solutions and design types. And created safe ones. So in this slides, also you saw in this presentation what kind of safe plans might be implemented. This picture is another one. I've been to Amsterdam and Copenhagen and Afghanistan too. In past, Afghanistan was a country that you could see many bicycle riders. So this is not something that any municipality or any kind of NGO can solve. It should be cooperated.
It's not something that we need to expect from municipality or any other consultancy organization. We need to change together. This is a saying from Einstein. Life is riding a bicycle. So that's all from me. I hope I can have some questions. I'm here if you have any questions to ask. If I am allowed, I want to stop sharing. Thank you, Tolga. You can stop sharing. It was very pleasant and long presentations, and we were able to see and evaluate that concept from different perspectives. Thank you. We can answer the questions, and our let will not have any breaks. We will get to the presentation of Damla Özlüer directly, and then on the last phase we will be answering the questions. You can ask your questions to every single one of us. You can ask your questions to every trainers here. Now I'm giving floor to Damla Özlüer. We talked about regulations and laws and a technical infrastructure. And of course, communication is also an important one. The campaigns in terms of communication in the bike roads should come first or come last. What can we do? Communication is a different concept, but how can we integrate communication in sustainable urban planning? Now, thank you very much, Mr. Tolga again, and floor is yours, Damla.
Hello everyone. For me, for a non-professional, the professional from not this circle, it was really important and beneficial presentation. Thank you, Mr. Tolga. So till we get to the end of our session, I want to talk about the communicational part of the issue. Why do we talk about the communicational aspect? Because in the modern world, when you do any business, you need to do the communications. Today, we see that the sustainability of the communication is emphasized. And today I'm going to talk about it as well. Let me share my screen first. And I will go full screen now. I believe you can see the screen. Probably the technical team will approve it. Yes, I can see it. So we are doing social benefit communication. When we talk about cycling, transport, and communication, we will talking about social benefit communication. These are under the, you can say that this is under the scope of advertisement, but it is not. Why it is not? And we will be talking about that. What is social benefit communications? And how do we do the communications of sustainable projects? Why do we use social benefit communication? In the widest concept, it means the social benefit. It means that it means the increase in the prosperity level of the society. Any event, incident, or policy change leads to social benefit. That's when we call it social benefit, and I believe everyone here is working for the social benefit of our society. Social benefit communications or advertising are the concepts that we can use. Advertising is, of course, a notorious word, but we are talking about the campaign process for the social benefit. It might be advertisements, lobbying activity, press relations, public relations, and we are using social media, petitions, and donations. These are the communication tools that we use. What is confusing is the concept of campaign. The advertising people can use public mass communications, billboards, televisions, and they might be giving visual ad. And there are below the line tools. These are printed business, and also events are part of the campaign, but they are not part of the campaign on their own. They are not campaigns on their own. You can also use social media campaigns. We always hear about this, but the campaign is a whole, and social media is one of the media. So let me clear this confusion a little bit before I start, and I will continue my presentation now. The reason I am saying this is that when we go back, the root of the word campaign, it is more clear. Campaign comes from la campana, and la campana means plain. When Caesar on April gathered his army on the plains before going to the war, that's when we call La Capana, and campaign comes from it. Our tactics, our tools, all the steps that we take make the whole of the campaign. So a project, for instance, like it's a project aiming, raising the demand on cycling transportation. When you start the campaign, the communications do not start. It does not start when we go on billboards. It starts, the campaign starts when we plan the communication process. What's the aim in social benefit communications? Our main aim is to change the social behavior and norms by using public regulations and necessary infrastructure. In social benefit communication, we try to change the norms. We do not try to sell a product. If we start a campaign on cycling, and if it's a long-term project, what we want is to change the norms. And we try to make cycle owners prestigious rather than car owners. So we are trying to intervene the social norms and alter them to an extent. The success of these campaigns depends on aim on changing the social behavior and ensuring the necessary infrastructure. We always hear about saying the resources are limited and advertising is expensive. Yes, this is correct to a certain extent because the public and private sources are limited, and also there is the responsibility of making a public expenditure. When we are talking about these sources, we are not only talking about the financial sources, but the communicational processes require serious human sources. So when we are spending from these sources, we always say if advertising is too expensive or is it necessary. However, it is mandatory because our modern world always put us confronting messages. We all see more than 1,000 messages per day. And among these messages, our project and our messages towards changing the norms and behavior, we need to make our messages visible, and we want to make it visible and we want to make people aware. So that's why we have to do communicational work. And when we plan the project, we should always think about the communicational planning, and we should be doing this together. So communications should be an item when we first start the planning of the project, because if we want change, we need to be noticed first. If people notice, they are informed. For instance, the awareness of using cycle as a transportation, then we can think about the bikes themselves. If people know, they are aware, if they are informed, they might be interested, they might be thinking, yes, I can do this, and if they have sympathy, they start to support it. It is not only about doing it themselves, but also them supporting the project itself and encouraging other people to do. And that's what we call it, a collaboration. And if they collaborate, they empower us. In traditional advertising, for instance, towards changing the purchase behavior, let's say don't buy this detergent but buy this one, does not have the chance that we have in social benefit, that once we get the support, they are the part of the campaign. They are the part of the campaign towards the targeted group. When they start to support this cycle transportation and they start to defend it in all media. So it leads to a relationship between you and the target group. What kind of a relationship is this? The target group becomes itself a social media. They share their photographs with cycles. They start to make the drivers aware of the cyclists. So if we convince them, then it will gradually expand like water, like a water drop. Let's talk about these differences between the commercial communication, which is advertising, and social benefit communication. On the commercial aspect, we are selling something. It's a value. It's money basically. But in social benefit communication, we are having a value measure that is ethical or social. The change rate depends on the market, on the commercial communication. For instance, it leads to price margins if you have major supply. There are different segments, the expensive, the medium, and the cheap segments. You always see that on toilet paper, for instance, and this is called making a price scissor. Also, it depends on the supply and demand, of course. There might be added value in a middleman, let's say. The distributor can put some added value. Also, it continues and it gets to the store, to the end user. There might be added value in between. It might be priced depending on the target group on commercial communication. The consumer is active in the decision but passive during the using process. For instance, I'm active on deciding to buy soap, but I'm not active in using soap. For instance, soap is not a good example maybe, but a washing machine, for instance, washing machines have programs and you are not active on that point. So in communicational process, in commercial communication, the behavior ends with purchase. However, the dynamics change when we talk about social benefit communication. The value is valued ethically and socially. It depends on the social and the ethical norms. The value is determined by that. So during our communications, we try to intervene with the values. And we are not thinking only about our ethical or moral values, but we are always thinking about the surroundings values. What's the meaning of this? Let's say you're having a cycle campaign. You should be informed about the stakeholders and the other people, like cyclists and cyclist associations. Probably they will prefer natural life because of the nature of the cycle itself. So natural issues are more important for them. So if you are making a cycle campaign, you cannot use a species-based discourse. And also probably they will be more aware of social gender, and that's why you shouldn't be discriminative when you are doing this campaign. So you create a cluster of values. There is no change value and you cannot have it second hand. If we are able to raise awareness about cycling, we cannot do this again. That's what we mean. If you convey something about social benefit, it gets growing value because it's like a seed and it leads to other changes. We don't have any middleman, we don't have distributors. Our value might change depending on the target group. That's the fourth point about social benefit communication. The pricing is done by the product owner depending on the target group on commercial communication. Let's say we are selling toilet paper and we are creating price scissors and we are coming up with expensive segments. However, on the other side, on the other category, you change your value depending on the target group. If you are campaigning on sustainability and cycling, if you are to speak with a group that considers cycles as evil, you should be altering your discourse like that. Supporters, not consumers this time. Supporters are active both in decision making and also using. They will be thinking about which bike to purchase, how to use the bike, and they make many decisions. And finally, the final part is not purchase, but it is the changing effect. How long a campaign should last was a question that we asked in the last session. But if you are making social benefit communications, there is no end to your campaign. Of course, the time and the content of the messages change, but when we aim the changing effect, your target group changes, and you should always be revising your messages, and you should be addressing the changed society, the changed target group, and you should be thinking about how to talk to them. We always talked about cycle, but there are different categories under this topic. NGOs, social benefit projects, sustainability projects, and we can talk about the unions, international organizations, businesses, foundations, and social change targeted projects. Then we have sustainability projects, eco-friendly projects, and also education industry benefit, because universities and schools aim this changing effect. Culture industry is the last one. Political communication is under the communications discipline, but it is not in the scope of social benefit because it depends on convincing the society based on political and principle positions. For instance, it might not be eco-friendly, and we have carbon lobby, and they do not contribute to social sustainability. So since there are political aspects to this political communications, we cannot consider that as social benefit communication. So we are to make a campaign, and now we will talk about how to do campaigns. There are some basic principles. First of all, you need to come up with a campaign briefing. It is both for your groups and also it is for the people that you will be conveying, let's say agencies or communication businesses. You should be deciding on the campaign style, campaign type. It might be about awareness, it might be a donation campaign. But regardless of that, first of all, you should be coming up with some questions and short answers, short questions and short answers. And you should be working on and coming to a consensus with all the groups that will be working on the campaign. Then you will get your campaign type automatically. There are different types. For instance, awareness campaign might be the type when we make a cycle campaign, because it is about raising awareness about the cyclists and cycle usage. One of the frequent mistakes here is trying to fit all the messages inside one type of campaign. However, the target group can hold one type of message. Doing communication expert sent through us a lot of pencils during a meeting, and I could only hold two. So that was the example. If you give many messages, you cannot decide on which messages the receiver will choose. So there should be a general idea on your campaign. And if you are to make supplement messages, they should be feeding the main idea, the general idea. You should not be lost between the messages. So what are those questions? The first one is, where are we? If you don't know where you are, you cannot decide on where your communications will go. For instance, raising demand on cycle roads. You should be thinking about the current status on the demand. And also you should be thinking about the level of communication and its current status. What is the actual demand? Why it is less, or why it is low, or why it is high? What are the sources? How it is received by the target group? What we can do? These are the questions. Also, about the communication universe, we should be asking what is happening in the communication industry when you are starting this campaign. You are making this campaign to raise demand on cycling, but give me an example. You chose 14th of February week. Let's say you are a public institution, NGO. You have limited sources. On 14 February week, it is the marketing new year. It is the new year for the marketing, and there are serious budgets and there are serious campaign preparing, and you will not be standing out with your actual sources. The only way to stand out is adding an interesting detail that will attach your campaign to the 14th of February. For instance, you can come up with a campaign that suggests that gifting a helmet to your mother rather than chocolates on Mother's Day, let's say. So you should be analyzing the period, the date and time when you're coming up with the campaign. Let's say World Nature Day, also some other important days are coming up. If they are directly involved, directly associated with your idea, you can build on them. But if they are not, you should be coming up with creative means. Also, of course, you should be thinking about the sources, but it is not only boosting Facebook or giving ads on Instagram or giving ads to the billboards, but it is also thinking about the human resources, because a campaign should be managed, and if you are even working with an advertising agency, there should be someone that should be communicating with them. So always think about your sources, and never forget that your stakeholders and the other stakeholders that you might confront are also sources. They might be supportive to your campaign, they might be giving other means of support. So you should always be thinking about your stakeholders when you are coming up with the campaigns and taking into consideration the sources. Let's say we are doing this cycle campaign, and last year we had worked with some celebrities on a project, and you should be thinking that if we spoke, would they support us? So this is a way of solution. And finally, you should be making an analysis of the perception of the campaign. Let's say cycling here, how cycling is received in your region, and also your businesses or your institution's identity. If you have a notorious face in a specific issue, you might want to go with some other institution because you will have the sign underneath the project. How you're received in a specific issue is really important. For instance, Greenpeace does not campaign on schooling girls because Greenpeace is not related and the target group knows that. And for instance, Greenpeace might walk with UNICEF or other institutions, or they don't do it at all. So you should be aware of the identity of your company or the business. For instance, how the artisans in the area where you build the bicycle road will react. You should be thinking about that because there might be changes or problems, and you should be thinking about giving them answers. Or you might even think about what contributions cycle roads could make to these shop owners. When you don't do that, you do the project, you do the campaign, but it gets backlash from other stakeholders. So we need a proper analysis before every campaign. Then we have SWOT analysis. We do this in the beginning of the campaign. This is a short form based on strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. So you should be thinking about these four. Let me go into detail. Be honest when you're making the SWOT analysis. Put everything on the table. During the briefing, you might not want to show some to the other stakeholders, but you should have them inside your analysis. Your strengths, for instance, you have a proper cycling infrastructure and you will be making an addition to it, let's say. Maybe you might have lots of sources this time and you might be really proficient in this issue and you might have a great team. These might be from among your strengths. Also, maybe you have good connections with NGOs and the public institutions on this issue. Weaknesses, the project, the campaign might have weaknesses as well. For instance, the traffic is really dense on the area and people might have difficulties having cycling roads. Also, they might not have a great knowledge on traffic. Also, finally, you might not have enough sources. Let's say you have conflicts with cycling associations. This might be a weakness as well. So you should be taking into consideration all of that. When we talk about opportunities and threats are different from your strengths and weaknesses, we try to look at the bigger picture here. You should be looking at the field, the horizon, when you are deciding on your opportunities and threats, identifying them. For instance, after the COVID pandemic, there is a high trend on living separately, living more economically, living more organically, more economically, more naturally. It's an opportunity because we will be campaigning on cycles. If there is a trend on reducing consumption or living more healthily, it's also an opportunity for you. Let's think about the threats. For instance, if the oil prices are on the decrease, that's a threat because if the oil prices decrease, there will be more vehicle used and it will be more accessible. Similarly, if there is a trend of prosperity race and some vehicles being used being more prestigious might be threats. So when you do this SWOT analysis, you position yourself and you also see the opportunities and the threats. That's how when you can decide on which messages to give and when to give them. You should always have objectives each project. Of course, you will be campaigning always, and every campaign begins and finishes. And what do you expect to be changed when you finish your campaign? You should be able to address your idea and objective in one sentence without any supporting phrases, etc. It should be a simple sentence. If you can address your objective with one sentence, you can compare your progress in every step. There will be suggestions, elegant suggestions from PR groups, some really attractive ideas from public institutions, from different departments. They will be coming up with ideas like let's put flags there, let's do drives there, but they might not be coinciding with the message every time. If you don't do that, you will be spending your sources in vain for that event. Also, target group analysis. A campaign always needs a target group analysis, and a campaign tries to change the behavior, conception, or the attribution or the actions of a certain group, and you should be analyzing what target group thinks about the project, about the idea, and we should be thinking how that person is communicating, where they are, how will we address them. If we cannot respond to these questions well, we can make campaigns that look great, but they do not change anything. We should always think about the field. I always give the example of a certain campaign. There was a campaign on a specific fish species that was going extinct, and the slogan was, "How long is yours?" And we always think about the campaign that is that had sexual connotations, and people do not remember the question of how long should be a fish to be eaten, this specific species of fish, lüfer, Istanbul lüfer. However, on with this message, it was really interesting, but we remember the campaign, we don't remember the message, and it was really problematic. However, it was successful because people always remember it. However, if we did not change anything, it is a waste of resources. So I believe we could use better options of giving this message, and it could be more successful. What do we think about when we make the analysis, the target group analysis? We think about demography, gender, age, race, ethnicity, education, and religion. It is not that we will be discriminating, but we will be thinking of audience to come up with a discourse. For instance, if you are working with university graduates, your discourse will change. And if your group is male and a primary school graduate, sorry, I did myself discriminating, but you should be altering your discourse. Different groups have religious sensitivities, and these might change over time. There might be some problematic words during certain periods, and if we do not use our words sensitively, carefully, we cannot convey our message. In communication, intention is nothing. What matters is what you do. Geography is important, local, national, international levels, and we need different words and different discourses depending on them. If you are doing a local campaign, you might want to take action specific to that region, and you may convey your message faster and more efficiently. Or you are coming up with an international campaign, you should simplify it and reduce the cultural codes in the campaign to make it work everywhere. We are thinking about the attribution, about the behavior of the target group. For instance, when they want to take action, they want to petition online, or they want to come to the meeting with the city council. So this is important, and we should be thinking about the steps that we should take when we want to operate the target group, when we want to make the target group take action. Also, we should think about the media, which media are accessible for them, paper, TV, etc. Selex had a research on age, and it showed that 65% people over 65 years of age consider the TV information reliable. Even though we think that internet access is high, the digital capital and their digital intellect is not high for this age group. Also, the digital nativeness is not high for people over the age of 65. We have 2.2% of them with digital intellect. Culture is also important. It is the last point. We learn about their backgrounds, red lines, values, and we try to ensure communication without harming them. Shared areas, shared points are safe platforms for us. Also, there is the set of concepts used by our target group. As a communication expert, I'm talking over communication terms. I'm using communication terminology. So we should be aware of the concepts that the target group knows and uses. So we try to alter our language and we try to reduce technical terminology from our discourse, because the terms that we use without realizing it, we are using them quite frequently and people do not know them. And if we are to speak to the target group, we should be able to communicate with the people out of this linguistic universe. We should make our discourse more understandable and simpler. And the following phase will be ensuring communication between two different linguistic universe. Timing is everything. This is valid for everything, I can say. I gave the example of 14th of February and Mother's Day. For instance, if we are making a campaign on convincing the city citizens to active transportation means, we should not be selecting Mother's Day week and international days, important days, special days, holidays, and social benefits might be useful in social media, social benefit campaigns. The media you use for the campaign adds to the discourse of the campaign. It adds different layers to the campaign. The media you use is important to the extent it is effective on the target group. People have great social media access and we make a lot of social media tendency. However, we see that any word on social media can be removed the following day. That's why printed media is considered safer, in quotes, because the target group says there is an ad here and it will be here. It is not a conscious behavior, but it's a subconscious behavior when they are reading printed media. Billboards, brackets, open air spaces are considered like it is important because it is there because it is important, and they gave money, they spent scarce sources for this. So we don't use one medium, we always use printed media, public media, and social media together. That's what we try to do because they support and feed each other. Also, we try to confront our target group 3 times. If someone sees your campaign message 3 times, it is more effective. Also, you don't have to give ads to newspapers and television, but when you're doing your social media campaign, you can support it by distributing brochures on public spaces. So it leads to an integrated project, and it leads to the campaign being understood by different circles on different media. When we say social media communication, the material you use always tells something about you. For instance, if you are making a cycling campaign, you should be talking about sustainable transportation, and you should touch to sustainability universe values. The values are there, and if you use expensive papers and expensive pamphlets, you will be colliding with your own discourse, our own values. So the material you use should be cross-checked. It is always useful for you. A good example is on the campaign, for instance, don't use balloons when you are campaigning on cycle. It is polluting the environment, it is dangerous for the birds, and they are plastic. You can use it as a part of your discourse. We are not using balloons, but we are doing this and that. So you can solidify your position in that value universe.
So we decided on our questions. What do we ask in the communication campaign? In what tone and pitch we're going to ask our questions. So every campaign has its own discourse, its saying, a motto. The strength is decided depends on the saying. So it should be consistable and strong. If you keep it strong, then it will be easy for you to convey your message. So every campaign has it has own tone. So it can be sincere, crazy, special, appealing. Your register might be negotiating, might be amicable. So, and you also can get your position in a different way. But the tone of your campaign should be in concordance with the point that you need to make. And you can change depending on the medium you use. If it's going to be, if the academy is your target, for example, if it's specialist targeted one, your discourse might be for specials. But if you use the social media language that we see on the municipalities in general, it can be a little bit humorous. But if you use a different kind of target audience, then your register and tone might be different accordingly. So you need to decide on this. You need to provide briefing to our creative team and the consultancy about your tone, so that your work will be less in terms of conveying your message, and then you will have your own mind map. So what can we say about the communication in sustainable urban transportation? As I said earlier, but it's also said by the bicycle ministry of our Netherlands. It's a popular saying that if you bring infrastructure, everyone comes. In Netherlands, there is no lack in terms of bicycle roads, but not many people use bicycle. So creating an awareness for the people to use bicycles is a requisite. So if we managed, let's say, and if we achieved that the people use it very much, then we need to appeal more and more people with other campaigns. So communication is ongoing. if we are working for an imaginary universe where the sustainable urban planning, urban transportation is a mainstream, we need to remove the obstacles in communication. But some barriers can be removed with some structural solutions like financial, legislative, and legal ways, like we have seen in the previous slides. But in informational steps to remove these barriers, it covers the make the information more common, creating communication strategies so that we can remove all of the barriers. Barriers in communication are so common. We always face some obstacles in front of us, some hurdles. So when we are engaged in the communication in sustainable urban transportation, we need to consider the communication barriers targeted and faced by the people in the target audience. It's not about infrastructure, but it's about mentality issue. For example, this is why people might not want to let their kids to ride their bicycle on the roads. So this is the planning that we need to make to create our strategy accordingly. Another important point is the common knowledge, the common words that we use. If you don't have a compilation of words, the common one, you need to make some steps to create one. You should not think about the general audience, but if the specialists want to use a strong and consistent communication, they need to communicate and work with other organizations. Sometimes sometimes you make projects with the other stakeholders, but you need to check on your language. For example, some words might mean differently, which were used by two other companies or organizations. Because for a message to be conveyed, you need to speak the same language. We need to change the value system, the system of values. This is what we do all the time. For the system values, actually, it's about popularity, wealth, image, or the other values. And we have internal values like belonging. So different people might have different frameworks in terms of their values. But when we talk about the urban transportation, how are we going to be able to convey the sustainable communication to the people with different values? So let me give you an example. We have two different texts here. One of them is about internal, the other was the outer values. In the one on the left side, we can see that the text is about the importance of the natural spaces, and it says we don't have sustainable city transportation and there is no politics on that. It also says that we need to place importance on the of the nature, and we need to remind people that people should support the sustainable transportation systems. On the right-hand side, we say that the text is designed with the outer values. It says, do you know the impact of sustainable city systems in the logistics costs? Sustainable cities transportation program
will make it easier to understand the sources and opportunities, and also it has some financial benefits. It creates new opportunities and make it more cost effective. And lastly, I wanted to give you an outline and notes actually for other campaign crews. Sometimes you're not able to work with a other outsourced campaign or company, so you need to be professional. You should have very meticulously produced materials and well-designed ones without any errors. You need to be realistic. You need to create, you need to define your goals, which you are able to achieve. So the objectives which are not achievable, attainable, will make the things more complex and more hard and harder. So you need to be constructive. I can say from my experiences, for example, for in past, we used to conduct some programs about the early age marriage. The tension was different. So after the campaign, we saw a big change actually, and the term changed, the terms, the words, the language changed, and the child marriage, the concept of child marriage, has been a negative word. So if you talk about the concepts within your campaign, it means that you put the concepts on the agenda for a long time. So you need to be more persistent, because the sustainable city transport communication is a marathon. You need to be resistant. You need to track and follow the sustainable planning in a general. You need to get your respect. You need to be well prepared for the transportation politics. Campaign is not about the billboards that we are on, but there should not be a campaign without any field work. You go to the fields, you make some meetings, but you need to be ready in these meetings. That the all communication activities are in accordance with the objectives. You need to record everything that you have, because we're talking about a marathon. You need to record everything so that you can see what you have done and what you haven't done in past. And you need to create an effect space. You need to communicate with other groups and act in groups. If you are, for example, conducting a program or campaign, sometimes you need to work with other stakeholders, for example, some stakeholders from the ministries or other NGOs that will create and widen your effect area. Thank you very much. It was a quick one. It has many details, but let me remind you that maybe sustainable urban transportation planning. We have a website and a training, and you'll be able to see the other training, comprehensive one, www.kapsam.net. It's not all about the communication, but the training also covers the technical issues as well. And I'm stop sharing my screen. Thank you very much. Thank you, Damla. It was fun and comprehensive slide. If you have any questions, we can answer the questions. As you know, at 1 p.m. we'll be completing our session. Now I'm reading the questions that we have. One of the questions is in terms of academic works focused projects, what are the NGOs or companies who supports financially and in terms of cooperation, apart from TÜBİTAK, and the companies who support micro mobility? Now, I'd like to answer the question first, and then I'll give the floor to the other trainers to answer the question. But we need to, I want to say that when it's an academic focused work, as you know, we are an association as WRI, so since we are a research campaigns, we are working on different ones, not academic first, and then I'll give the floor to the other trainers to answer the question. But we need to, I want to say that when it's an academic focused work, as you know, we are an association as WRI, so since we are a research campaigns, we are working on different ones, not academic projects. But apart from TÜBİTAK, I think, as far as I know, there are BAP projects. Maybe I can also mention the fact that you can track the other programs crossing with the other NGOs. I know that they'll be regard soon. If you're an academic organization, you can apply, for example, soon to work with other NGOs. This is what I can say. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Tolga and Ms. Damla? Okay. They can also see some funds resources to be guided by them. Another question is, can you tell us a little bit about communication works examples from bicycle transportation contexts? I can give many examples. I didn't want to give many examples in my presentations because you can search on Google and you can see many ones. I can give you two examples. One of them is Think Bike campaign. Which also covers and has consists of a gesture like this, so which warns people to consider the existence of bikes. Another campaign that I'd like to tell you about is a campaign from Manchester. I really like their methodology. Apart from billboards or advertisements, they created a cultural bike road map. So they created a bicycle road map tour and they put into application, so which made other audiences to be participated. So apart from all of these, there are many campaigns and videos that you can watch on internet. Another question is about Istanbul. One of our listeners says there are some recreational roads in the coastlines of Istanbul, but considering the topography of Istanbul, do you think it's possible to talk about bicycle road planning in context of urban transportation? Do you have any topography examples from other countries or cities? As you know, as he or she says, there are recreational bicycle roads in Istanbul. But we need to create all of these bicycle roads as a network, so the roads should have a function. I mean, they should take you from one point to the one point. So it should has a function. Let me say this. For example, imagine that there is a bike road from Bağdat Street. It does not take anyone to anywhere. If it was able to take me from Kadıköy to somewhere else, it can be integrated on the other urban transportation planning. But we shouldn't consider the topography as an obstacle. The Lisbon, for example, in Portugal has the similar topography like Istanbul, but they have more bicycle roads and bicycle transportation compared to Istanbul. Of course, Istanbul is disadvantages, but about designing the bike roads integrate with the other plannings. It's not about creating a bicycle road from, for example, a province, a district in Istanbul to another district. This mentality is a common one because this is what always the people say. They always give the example of topography. We shouldn't listen to the people talking about the topography, traffic jam, under the pretext of not wanting the bicycle roads. The fact that they talk about these facts is because they don't want bicycle roads. I'm interested in this project and this work for more than for more than 10 years. But topography excuse is something that I always hear. Topography is not does not belong to Istanbul only. Let me add this as well. You know, topography, climate, snow, rainfall, temperature, all of these concepts are manageable concepts, and it can be supported by other aspects, and a safe transportation is realizable. We talked about some factors, negative factors, but in topography there are, of course, some solutions as well. Sometimes the bicycle riders might go down and take a ramp or drive or ride in different conditions, but there are solutions for that. In Istanbul, in addition to these facts, there is different kind of planning actually. So in Istanbul, the transportation direction is linear. So in order to solve the problem, we need to integrate the bicycle into different types of transportation system. It's not about putting a bicycle and using bicycle to go some point to some point. In bicycle transportation, if you're using bicycles, for example,
you don't need to actually, in theory, you don't need to ride for more than 15 minutes, for example. The reports say that 10 or 15 minutes riding for 10 or 15 minutes is more efficient. And an example of Istanbul, the bicycle is an important solution in a vertical ways. Another question is about data collection. Sometimes the local governments are not sharing their data in terms of the cooperation and data collection, data providing. So what are the experiences of WRI? What do you suggest to academics? Of course, I don't have much knowledge on the data collection in academic works, but in Istanbul, for example, there are different kind of partnerships and corporations in data collection. I know that the municipality conducted hackathons or other works in transportations, and they invited the students who work in that area to participate in the data collection programs. Maybe the issue of data collection and data sharing is something that the municipalities should answer, because the data sharing is not enough, because the raw data is not that efficient. The most important thing is to filter the data and provide meaningful data. So maybe local authorities and municipalities should make their data, they collect that data, more meaningful by creating workshops and partnerships. So this can be a step in terms of data sharing. I don't know if Ms. Damla or Tolga might want to add. What would you like to say, Tolga? You worked in Africa or in different parts of the world. Is there anything that you want to add in data collection? You put it very clearly, Merve. I don't think it'll be good to give an example from Africa. We can have another question. We have another question here. I believe that young people might participate in media communication in terms of creativity. But do you see any important positions for the students in bicycle transportation planning? This one is a hard question. We don't know how to position the students in the bicycle transportation projects. If you allow me to talk about my experiences, I'm not into the preparation of the planning of the project, but I've been working with young people for a long time, especially with the startup projects. As a person who was able to see the response of the youth to in digital projects, uh, I want to give the floor to you to answer the question. So, any kind of bicycle transportation project, let me answer the question in two different ways. So, it obviously requires a technical specialty.
For example, you need to prepare it well when you are engaged in railway, because the preparations are too long and comprehensive. The same is applicable for bicycle transportation. Bicycle is a transportation type of transportation, so we need to do the same in bicycles as well. So, at the backstage, there is a technical phase, which belongs to the specialty of architects or urban planners or even environment engineering. So if some students might want to get their specialty in these areas, they can get their experiences by participating in this project. So on the other side, there is a issue of participation. By making youth participate, or even elderly people or children, into the programs and let them have their say in urban planning, we can achieve better, like some focus groups or forums or some meetings and workshops. We can analyze their considerations and create our projects according to the demands of theirs. So therefore, young people either can participate as a specialist and participate in the projects in organizations, or they can be active and demanding their right in urban life. They can track, they can follow the workshops, or they can be a member of NGOs who works on that field. And they create their own ideas and present them. We have 16 minutes left, and we have two other questions. One of the questions is, why do you think that the bicycle transportation is more common in abroad compared to Turkey? What do you think is the main reason? Maybe Tolga might want to answer the question. The reason why, I think it's about the reason because of the bicycle roads being more common in the north. The reason is because the bicycle transportation planning is human based, and bicycle transportation is a part of the sustainable transportation. So the sustainable transportation was implemented in all those cities. That's why the bicycle transportation is more common. Of course, there are some minor facts like campaigns or behaviors of the users, people using and people who do not use. But in general, we see that the reason is that they have their sustainable transportation.
It is more common in Denmark and Holland and the Netherlands. And when we look at the picture, giving examples from these countries might be boring because it might lead to reactions like we are not Denmark or we are not the Netherlands. However, we should be underlining that the old Netherlands ambassador of Turkey, Mr. Bartu, did a presentation and Mr. Tolga showed that during the presentation during 70s in the Netherlands the picture was really different, and it is the same for Denmark. Once the vehicle traffic and the private drivers were dominant in the Netherlands and in Denmark. Some campaigns, protests, and other incidents led to this picture today. It is not only campaign, but it is the oil prices. Of course, there was a push from the bottom, from the mass, but it is mainly related to the oil crisis. So the municipalities, the public institutions, and everyone came together. Okay. So with the public institutions, NGOs, and other stakeholders came together and made this campaign and gained this success. I want to raise awareness in the audience. We are always talking about the same countries, but I can give you an example. Sweden, compared to Denmark and the Netherlands, does not have many bicycle roads, and the only reason for that is the following. The difference between a Swedish and a Dan, of course, they have similar lifestyles. It is the Scandinavia. But in Sweden, there are global car manufacturers. In the Netherlands and Denmark do not even have their own car companies, brands. So we should be thinking about all of these. We tried to give some technical information during the session about the Turkish and the foreign examples. But we did not have any questions about cycle manufacturing. I don't know if it was not interesting, but I expected such a question. I wanted to say that I'm waiting for that question. The difference between Sweden and Denmark is quite important. It is a huge margin, and it is not only about not having a car manufacturer. No, this is the reason. Sorry, I am correcting myself. This is the reason. They do not have any car lobby in Denmark, but they have in Sweden. Someone asked about the website Ms. Damla offered. It is kavsak.net. It is the Turkish Sustainable Transportation Network. You can be a member to it individually and as your institution. There are many mainstreams. There are many streams there, and it is quite beneficial, I believe. And it's a really good project that we like. Maybe what we can do is that I can show you on the screen itself. So this is our website. If you can see my screen, I opened the website. I can quickly walk you through it. You see the new model, electronic learning program. And also, if you need information, you can see the about and information bank sections. We have the network library. You can look at the grants. You can look at the publications, and also you can join us. You can be a member to it individually and on behalf of your institution. So this is our website, kavsak.net. So this will be an info for you. I don't think we have further questions. If you have any questions, I will make a round of last words to our speakers. Let's start with Ms. Damla. If they have anything to say when we are wrapping up, then we will hear from Mr. Tolga. I would like to thank everyone for being here during the weekend, and thank you for working on a more sustainable and habitable city. Or else I don't have anything else to say. Do campaigns, come up with projects, and make communication continuous. You don't need huge sources for that. I agree with Ms. Damla, and if you are here to listen to us on this Saturday morning, I would like to thank you. Also, I would like to thank MARUF crew for their efforts and contributions. Cycle transportation is a process of transformation, and it depends on the question if you want sustainable transportation and how you define intercity city inside the transportation in the city. The efforts on bicycle transportation focuses on bicycles itself, but it shouldn't. It should be focusing on sustainable transportation, and you should be focusing on how you define sustainable transportation, and then you can focus on the most important component of it, cycle transportation. It is not rocket science to come up with a good planning on cycle roads and cycle networks, and I believe all local governments are eligible to do it. SWRI, Sustainable Cities, we have been supporting our local governments and central governments for more than 10 years, and we will continue to do so. Thanks a lot, Mr. Tolga, and I will be wrapping up with the last words, and I will be finishing the session. First of all, for your support to both topics, and by agreeing on both points, I can start with that. First of all, as Mr. Tolga said, it's like a pyramid. Our priority, our vision is important. Are we human based? Are we focusing on a human based transportation? Are we designing for the pedestrians, or we are designing for the cars? This is an important question for vision. We might be hearing this a lot, but we will not hesitate to repeat it, because if we start the design process with that, we can be successful. Or else, as Mr. Tolga said, then you cannot make a bike road, and this is just painting the road basically. You cannot change anything. If you cannot ensure safety for people, you don't even have to do the bike roads. You don't have to even paint the road. So the central governments and the local governments should make prioritization of their approaches, and as we said before, defenseless movers, defenseless actors on the traffic should be prioritized. The urban design components, the road and roundabout designs should be in accordance. At one hand, the cycle roads should be connected to some main arteries, to some focal points, and there should be a change in the designation process on the large scale. Sustainable urban mobility plans are on the agenda these days, SUMPs. For Istanbul, there have been some work, and in the near future, there will be other cities working on these SUMP plans. So when these plans are prepared, I will be more hopeful, and we will see if participants will be high and if they will be sustainable. Different stakeholders, actors, and their representation is important. And I believe we will be on a better point then. So bicycles should not be used sportively or for recreation purposes. It should be on the center, on the core of the urban transportation, with the help of campaigns, incentives, and projects. And the use in the transportation should be increased. I can make an emphasis on another point. After a certain extent, the daily transportation, what we call commuting between houses and the workplaces, there should be work that involves incentives and funds, and there are methods that reward the user when bicycles are preferred. So we see that they are useful, and maybe these might be discussed to the further parts of the project. And because it is mainly directed and mainly directed to the financial part of the project, and I believe we have this capacity as Turkey, as the country, and I want to finish with good wishes, my best wishes, and I would like to finish with a passed away professor. What we call a city is nothing but human, so we should increase the extent of habitability of the city, and we should come up with designs and solutions that are human based. We can be happier, the city might be more comfortable and more delightful. That's my approach. Thanks for your attention and thanks for your participation for this really long training session.